If you had told me like 3 years ago that starting my own business was going to like completely change who I am as a person, I never would have believed that. Like, in the amount of personal growth I've done has been amazing.
Have you ever thought about becoming a fractional executive or maybe hiring one like a fractional CMO? In today's episode, I interviewed Jessica Shirra. She made the jump 3 years ago from a marketing professional to becoming a fractional CMO. Now she's expanded her team, her practice. She has an agency. She has a course for aspiring fractional CMOs. And so we talk all about building her business, modern marketing, and being a fractional CMO. Today's podcast is sponsored by Intuit. I use Intuit in my personal life with TurboTax and Credit Karma, and as you probably know, Intuit has a lot of great products and solutions for businesses. So let me set this up. There is a lot of administrative work that comes along with building a business or operating a business, which means all of us have to wear a lot of different hats. But you didn't start your company just to spend your time focused on tasks like filling out paperwork or crunching numbers. Fortunately, QuickBooks Online offers tools that make administrative tasks a breeze for businesses of all sizes, so you can get back to growing your business. Whether you're a side hustle or a sprawling enterprise, QuickBooks Online makes it easy to get up and running with a free guided setup that positions you for success. Don't shoulder the administrative burden of your business alone. Let QuickBooks Online do the heavy lifting so you can start, run, and grow your business with confidence. Visit quickbooks.intuit.com to learn more about how QuickBooks Online can be a game changer for your business. Hi, Jess. How are you today? Thanks for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm really excited to talk about marketing, e-commerce, being a fractional CMO. And let me actually start there. So you are a marketing professional, but had a background career in marketing and decided to make the switch to being a full-time fractional CMO. What was the catalyst there?
So I've been in marketing for 15 years and been working as a fractional CMO for 3. So the catalyst actually was having my second daughter. I mean, I've always really had that entrepreneurial itch. I think like from my very first job, the very first day, I just remember thinking like, okay, this is cool, but I kind of want to build my own company eventually. And I think just after having both of my daughters, I had the opportunity to work within a company that was like very family friendly and very flexible after having my first. So it was a really nice stepping stone, remote and, flexible hours and things like that. But I just felt like I wanted, even more flexibility. And I also just wanted sort of control over who I was working with, the kind of work I was doing. And I think at the time too, I had been feeling just this desire to expand and really step into like what I felt like were my strengths. So I found myself typically in, I had worked in like some big corporate roles, like Lululemon and things like that. But a lot of my experience was in sort of like a small to mid-sized business where, there might be a marketing team of like 5 to 10 people. And often when you have teams of that size, you end up sitting in like a strategy seat and doing some execution. And while I didn't mind the execution, it just felt like this wasn't really like what lit me up. And I felt sort of like I was capable of more and like meant for more. I started to just really reflect on like when do I feel like I'm in flow and what work really lights me up and what do I feel that I'm like actually really excellent at. And it's strategy and really being able to like zoom out and look at things from like a 30,000 foot view and really understand the business and how marketing fits into the business goals. And then also be able to understand like from a really granular execution level, how all of that stuff matters and really ladders up to the marketing strategy and then the business goals. So it all kind of clicked for me when I stumbled across the term fractional CMO and started learning about, what this role looks like and kind of how the role functions within an organization. It just felt like an aha moment for me.
It is a relatively new term, at least for me. I think that I feel like in the last couple of years is when I heard about it or
for the first time or started seeing it over and over again. So it kind of is what it sounds like. Someone's hiring a fraction of a CMO or part-time CMO, something like that. Maybe talk about the benefits you see of hiring a fractional CMO. I know we were reflecting before the call that when I work with small businesses or like an entrepreneur or a founder, marketing is not always something that they have any experience in. And so who do you hire? What do you do first? What strategies and tactics should you have? Like maybe they're a technical leader or a product leader, something like that, just have no idea. But they can't just go ahead and they just can't hire you full time. That nobody has the budget for that.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I feel like one of the biggest benefits to bringing on a fractional CMO is really sort of like right sizing the support that you need and actually being able to like better leverage your budget. So to your point, instead of bringing me on at like a C-suite full-time salary when you don't really have that much like actual CMO work, you can just hire a CMO for like that right sized amount. So, a small to medium sized business generally needs like a really strong marketing strategy and plan. And then they just need someone, really experienced to oversee the execution of that to make sure that, what was on paper when it comes to life is actually as it's meant to be and it's moving the right needles forward and things like that. So the reason I really love that is because what I see often are small to medium sized businesses trying to sort of have like one person fill that seat or many seats. So they will have one person and they might be hiring somebody like more senior and strategic. And that person is like doing strategy, but also posting to social media and responding to DMs. And, when you really think about like how they're spending their budget, they're paying somebody at, a C-suite salary level, and that person might have 10, 12, 15 years of experience. And then they're like responding to DMs, which is like a very entry level marketing task. And it's just really not the best use of their time. So they're kind of overspending for this person to be like stretching into execution like a good percentage of their time. Or I sometimes see the inverse too of like bringing in somebody junior and they're just like out of their depth when it comes to strategy and they don't really understand, the business, the goals behind the business, like what moves the business forward, how the CEO is thinking about things. And they don't really understand that like bigger picture of marketing and how, everything should be driving the business forward. So they end up like just out of their depth, and then they don't really have a strong strategy, and the execution ends up being kind of like watered down.
I like that junior example that you brought up because I was actually gonna say something along those lines. Early in my career, I worked as a startup, and I was that at a startup, and I was that junior marketing hire, if you will. And it was super fun, because I was sort of doing everything, but I didn't have a coach or a mentor. I mean, the founders were technical. They had engineering backgrounds and product backgrounds. And so I didn't have anybody to coach me. As part of what you do as a fractional CMO, help those junior people with their career and that sort of thing? Or is that sort of outside the scope of
No,
what
absolutely. Team development is definitely a big part of it. So depending how we're working with clients, like we have advisory packages and we have actual fractional CMO packages as well. But as part of both of those, we are definitely working really closely with the existing teams and trying to, like, one of the things we really look at is like right people, right seats. So we want to make sure that the company is resourced with the right people. And so what I mean by that is they've got the right staff for the things that they should be doing. And we also want to make sure that the people are sitting in an area that they're really feeling passionate about. So we spend a lot of time actually getting to know the marketing teams and understanding like, okay, what do you love about your role? What do you not like? Is there an area that you're really passionate about learning, like potentially paid ads or, building out a marketing strategy if it's somebody more junior? And we do what we can to give that person stretch projects and access to us as CMOs to really start to learn and kind of stretch their, strategic thinking.
I like that a lot of your focus, whether it's yourself in your own business or the folks that you work with, is trying to put folks in positions where they're doing the work that they love. Because I feel like, I don't know if you have any data to support this, that when you're doing the work that you love, it's a better work quality. You're working harder.
Oh, totally.
Like it's like
Yeah.
so much better for the business, like 10x better when everybody's doing stuff that they like and they're good at.
Yeah, exactly. Because often what I see, if you have someone trying to do a whole bunch of things, they're really good in like one or two areas. And so, maybe when they write copy or they're creating social content, they're like quick, it's really great quality. It's actually converting and driving engagement. It's performing really well. But then you have them over here trying to figure out like how to set up an email automation or how to do maybe the tech side that's like really not their zone of genius. So they're spending, you know, 12 hours trying to set up something that would take somebody who knows it maybe 20 minutes. And so often there can be that inefficiency. And then even when that person kind of cobbles it together and figures it out, it's like not really as strong as it can be.
I think I was going to ask you, so we're sort of like, what's your favorite part of the business? But I'm getting that. I think you've addressed that. You knew, I guess, from day one that you thought you wanted to have your own business. What are some of the challenges you feel like you've experienced or had to work through as you're starting your own company, expanding, et cetera?
That's a great question. There's been so many challenges. Where do I start? I would say probably like two of the biggest ones that come to mind would be like my own mindset and development work would be number one. And then as my team has grown, so when I started, it was just me. Now I have an agency called Navi, and there's multiple fractional CMOs on my team. So I'll kind of chat about that first and then circle back to the mindset piece because the people piece is a little more straightforward. So I find that there definitely has been some learnings along the way growing my own team. And I think that when you do something or when you provide a service that is like strategic thinking and thought leadership in a lot of ways, it's really tough to figure out like how do you find someone that can come and do the same thing or very similar. So I really had to kind of learn some lessons around like, what am I looking for in a fractional CMO? For me, it's been really looking for someone who has like the level of strategic thinking that can kind of like step back and really understand the business. I don't think a lot of marketers come in and take time to understand the CEO's vision and what their goals are, what's working, really deep dive into the offers. Like we come in and try to see and understand like all areas of the business, not just marketing, because we want to know the business as well as the CEO, or try to anyways, so that then we can come in from a marketing lens and be like, okay, we get the whole picture. And with that knowledge, here's what we think marketing could do to help achieve those goals. So I think like looking for and screening for that way of thinking is quite difficult. So I've started to put some test projects in place and sort of like a stepped, phased approach to bringing somebody into working in the business. And that's been really successful over the past year. And then I would say the mindset piece, if you had told me like 3 years ago that starting my own business was going to like completely change who I am as a person and make me like have to confront all of the like limiting beliefs I have and really kind of like look at myself and like evolve and grow as a person, I never would have believed that. Like, in the amount of personal growth I've done has been amazing. I struggle to find words for it because I just feel like I'm not who I was 3 years ago, in the best of ways. Like I have grown as a human. I'm more confident. I'm a better mom. I'm a better wife, friend. Like it's just really expanded me as a person. And, I think really to be successful in business, it takes a lot of tenacity and, a lot of your like fears and things kind of come up. So you really have to be able to like work through that and like push through that to sustain and be able to kind of go to the next level.
In the last interview that I did with a guy named Dan Chapin, he's the CEO of a games company. He mentioned that one of his big kind of growth things was he basically had to surround himself with people who could give him criticism. Like it was almost like he needed to become like a way better listener. That's what I took from it. And your talk about having more confidence, realizing you have to have more tenacity. Can you unpack that a little bit? Is that more about like how to close clients, how to properly bill for your services? Or
I think it'll be different for everybody, but I think for me, there was when I started lots of sort of, I guess, challenges to come up around like money mindset. So like charging my worth, sort of imposter syndrome a little bit at times. Just a lot of different like, wow, can I do this? Or wow, this is actually really hard. And like, how do I push through? Like there's just times I think in building your business where things are going really well. And then there's times where they're not. And so I've found in those times when things have not been going well, where maybe I'm struggling to find leads, or maybe I've lost like a dream client, or maybe I've screwed up and made a mistake. Like a lot of those limiting beliefs can kind of surface. Like I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, like all of the things. And I think like I don't know that I was like as attuned to those thoughts until getting into this work, because really starting to surround myself with other entrepreneurs that were working with coaches, I kind of opened my eyes to this world of like, I can get a business coach, but I also can have someone that helps me with my mindset. And that will take me further than any business coaching.
Well, I'd like to shift to gears a little bit and talk about some of the businesses and clients that you work with, Jess. I know that a lot of your clients are in e-commerce and or apparel, and it feels like their e-commerce is a really competitive marketplace right now. I know that in my social feeds on IG, I'm seeing dozens of different leisure wear companies, health supplements, everything. And so as you think about like the challenges that e-commerce companies are going through, how would you categorize them, or what are the biggest? Is it branding? Is it return on ad spend? Is it measurement? Or is it something else?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's probably all of those and
Mm-hmm.
other things. I mean, I think that, so yes, a lot of our clients are e-commerce. And I think when we see a client who is kind of struggling to stand apart from the competition or grow, often I think like what is happening is there's usually some lack when it comes to like their USP or what sets them apart. And so, I think that the big challenge right now is consumers have so many options, and they really value convenience. And depending on your target audience, like there's different factors that go into how they're making their decisions. Particularly like the younger generations are very focused on like sort of the sustainability factors or the do good factors of a company. So there's different ways I think companies can set themselves apart. But I think what the biggest gap that I see is just like, a lack of kind of really looking at the market from like an objective perspective and thinking from the perspective of the consumer. Like if I was looking and shopping for XYZ product, like how am I going to make decisions? Where am I going to look? And what sort of factors will determine like where I'll actually spend my money? I find a lot of clients will say like, oh, no one's doing what we're doing. And because they might have like a unique feature or something like that. But in reality, like we know consumers will have like more of a broad category in their mind, and they might look at like a certain feature as one small aspect, but there is so many options. So I think what brands can really do to stand out is think through the customer experience and how they're really differentiating themselves. So that to me spans from like product to branding to customer experience, all the way through to like delivery and just every touch point they're having with the consumer. And thinking about like, okay, how do our products stand out? What does our pricing look like relative to the competitor space? Shipping, returns, like all of that really, really influences. And then I think, if you were to just say a company is like ticking all those boxes and doing really, really great, I think the other, like the next layer is then like, who are you as a brand? Because if I'm going to look at like this white sweater versus, another brand, like, okay, why would I shop at this brand versus another? And I think like Lululemon's always a really great example and probably one of the world's leading in this aspect, but they have done a great job creating a culture around their products. Apple too. So like people don't buy an Apple phone because they've done all of the research and it's like the best phone on the market. They buy it because they identify with something to do with the brand. Like they see themselves as like an Apple user who Apple has created this kind of painted this picture of like, if you're Apple, you like aesthetic and clean lines and simple and like you're kind of ahead of the game when it comes to tech. And, you identify more with the attributes that the brand has like kind of painted around their products than the product itself. And Lululemon has done a great job with that as well, being, such a leader in like the community space and the active space and just sort of painting a picture of like, who is the person and who are the people that wear Lululemon and, are you in that camp or are you not?
I think you've hit on something so important because marketing often is pigeonholed into customer acquisition. How much am I paying to get someone to be a first time customer and how big is their basket and so on and so forth. But with Lululemon and a bunch of other brands, it's word of mouth, it's referral, it's all of those things. And so for like a challenger brand or a smaller brand, how much are you thinking about, once I buy something, how do you get me to tell my friends about it?
I think the absolute simplest way is you just make a really, really great product. So like, one of the things Lululemon does, and I would say Lululemon, but they're so big, but there are smaller brands that do this too. I think like AG Greens is an up and coming like one that I really feel does this. Like they invest a lot in their product, in the product research, really doing a lot of testing with their market. So if you're creating something that, I look at marketing a lot from like a pain point perspective and sort of a transformation perspective. So like when we're thinking about customers, what problem are we solving for them? And so if we can think about our products and we think about solving that problem, how are we doing it in such a way that like, we don't even need to create a referral program. We don't have to like incentivize anything. Like we're solving that problem so well that they can't help but tell other people because it's like, okay, I just got this, I don't know, these pair of pants and they are amazing. I've worn them, a bunch of times to work out and they're not pilling, they're not shrinking. I can wash them really well. Like they're such great quality and they fit me. And when I do XYZ thing and I stretch, like they don't fall down like the other ones. Like, and the reason, so if we think about some of the athletic brands that have like really technical products, the reason they work well and they just feel better and people will spend money on them is because they've like actually tested them in real life and like tested the use case of them. So if you think about like, any kind of product you've purchased where it's got this like unique or smart thing around use. So I'll just give you like a random example that's coming into my mind. So I just recently got for my birthday, like these Pampered Chef bowls that are like insulated and keep dinner warm when it's like on the table. And they have this like, when you take off the lid, there's like this little edge that you can like rest the pot or the lid on the side of the bowl. So it's not like taking up space on the table. It just kind of like nicely sits there. So like what I think about when I think about that kind of a feature is that brand like deeply understands their customer and they've like sat at the dinner table and been like, how does this feel to hold this? How does it feel to pass it? Like what kinds of things am I going to do with it? And what would make the using of this product like feel better or function for me? Or like when I move this way or when I do that, like what kinds of things like feel good or don't feel good? And how do we solve that problem? So I think it's like tons of customer research and really just making sure your product is not just delivering like the base answer, but you're sort of like taking it that next level.
Do you feel like brands sort of struggle with what to tell customers about the various attributes of their product? Because maybe it's got a good price point compared to another product that might do the same thing, or maybe it's sustainably made, or maybe it's just really easy to use, or it's got great colors, and so how do you as a let's say that the CEO is saying all these things, and now you're trying to advise the CEO how to think about marketing investments and what the final 5 video tests should be?
I think it kind of comes down to like, you can't be all things to all people. And so when you are creating a product or when you're thinking about your marketing, getting really clear on who your audience is. And I think, many brands can niche down even more than they already are. So to your point, are you going to be the affordable option? Are you going to be the option that maybe isn't the cheapest? Maybe in fact it's the most expensive, but it is like the most functional. It has all the features. They've thought of everything. Who do you want to be and what customer segment do you want to go after? Because you can't hit all of them at the same time because you'll just not really land with anybody.
I wanted to ask about some of the more technical aspects of marketing. We're all using generative AI to answer all kinds of questions for us. When you think about e-commerce brands, or maybe any of the clients that you have, how are you using AI in marketing efforts to improve efficiency? What's working? What's not working? What do you think about that right now?
I mean, I personally use AI all day, every day with clients, and we get the teams set up as well. So, gosh, I can think of a lot of different examples. I think ManyChat, I don't know that that's quite AI, but it's automation. That's been amazing. And I see lots of brands doing really, really well with that, automating their DMs on Instagram. It's a great way to drive leads. I'm seeing also a lot of AI for kind of content planning or content creation. I think there's lots of learnings there. There's lots of ways that it can be done poorly, but there's also
Yeah.
lots of ways that it can be done really well. AI is great if you're training it and kind of feeding it all of the right information that it needs. So if it understands your brand voice, your audience, your offerings, your USP, like all of the things it needs to know from like a contextual standpoint, then the output will be stronger. It also really depends like the input you're putting in. So you can say like, hey, create social media content for me for a month. Or you can give it a prompt that's like a page long that talks about how you want the content to be created and the fact that you want it to have a hook and a CTA on every single one. And you want each to be different and you want to touch on these types of pillars that are part of your strategy. Like you can really, the more kind of directive and details you get with your prompts, the better the output will be. So I see that a lot as well.
Another question I had was about working with teams, and we talked about a really good scenario where fractional CMO is taking a really great junior person, coaching them up, finding the right state, and so on. What happens when there are challenges in the organization? Let's say with execution or with the internal marketing team. Is that something you think about, don't think about? What do you do in those kind of situations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say it does come up a fair amount. I really see the fractional CMO role as like arm in arm with the CEO. And I don't take it lightly that I'm brought on as their right hand marketing advisor. And so whenever I see that there's like performance issues or there might be, someone who's just like really not a fit for their role, I do share it with the CEO and usually have some sort of a recommendation to go with that. So sometimes that just looks like a little bit of coaching for that person. Sometimes it looks like putting them into another role. Sometimes it just looks like, replacing them overall with somebody who is a better fit for where the company needs to go. And I think, we kind of have the luxury as, being a fractional role where we're integrated with the team, but we're not integrated as much as a full-time employee would be. So it's a little easier to be, a little bit less emotional about these decisions and really come from a like pure, just like business perspective. And hey, it's not personal, but this is what I'm seeing. And this is my recommendation.
How do you market your business? You've gotten to a point from month one to month, 30 or 40 that you're in right now. You've hired folks, you have multiple different programs. What do you see as in the stage of your business right now? How do you market yourself?
Our website is SEO optimized, so we get some leads often from there. And our team is very niche. So, as I mentioned, we work with e-commerce clients as well as like info product clients. So that means anyone with like courses, memberships, programs, like anything that's kind of they're selling their expertise. So because we're niche, we come up in some search terms that are kind of niche. So we get some leads that way. And then social media is another one for us. So my personal LinkedIn and my personal Instagram. I don't do too much on my business accounts, but I do build my own personal brand. So lots of leads come from that. We also go on podcasts when we have an option to do that. And then we get, I would say, like, majority of our business really comes from word of mouth referrals through our existing clients.
And you're giving yourself a lot of different ways to win. I'm sure a lot of folks out there hearing will be like, okay, I can still get leads through SEO. And that's great to hear. Jess, any advice for someone that wants to make the leap to become a fractional CMO or fractional, some other type of fractional role, but just needs a little bit of a nudge? Any advice you would provide?
Oh, I have tons of advice. Well, and actually, so when I started this business, probably about a year and a half in, I kept having people reach out to me, both marketers as well as like other functional experts, like maybe in finance or operations, who were interested in making the leap to fractional, or just kind of curious about like, what is it like? And how do you work with clients? How do you price and package yourself? So I would always meet with them and share as much as I could and kind of encourage them, because I love this work and it's been like so fulfilling for me. But it kind of got to the point that I couldn't meet with everybody. It was just the volume was so high. So I actually created something called Fractional CMO School, where I have basically like downloaded my whole brain and templates and just literally everything I've done and created behind the scenes for my business, from like building it to selling myself to marketing myself to building strategies for clients, working with clients, like what is the role like answering all those questions kind of within that program. So that's a really great resource. But outside of all of that, I think like the one big piece of advice I would say is that if you are really looking to kind of elevate out of execution and into strategy and like step into a leadership role where you are like part of the C-suite team and helping a CEO like lead and grow their company, it's such a fun role, and I really love it. So I would encourage, if that's like your goal, your vision, your dream, I would say like go for it, and also give yourself some grace, because I think it took me some time to shift from corporate and shift from roles where I was straddling execution and strategy into this space. And kind of, it really took me some time of like getting the reps in, making mistakes, and like really till I got into a groove of like, okay, I know what this role feels like, and I know how to like really powerfully show up as a CMO in this function.
And for the listeners, we'll put the Fractional CMO School stuff in the show notes if folks are listening and want to check that out. Jess, thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Did you know that more than 20 million professionals and business owners visit business.com and Business News Daily? Why? It's the best place for resources, advice, and information about how to grow your business. And if your goal is to reach our audience, you should become one of our lead partners, sponsor a section of the site, or sponsor even this podcast. Reach us at business.com/connect. That's business.com/connect.